They say the desert is a place of silence, an open sea of sand and wind where secrets are buried deeper than bones. But some things in the desert don't stay buried. Some things follow you home. So ask yourself this: what if the last shadow in your room didn't belong to you? What if something waited in the corners of your house, still smelling of scorched earth and ancient death, following you back from a place you were never meant to survive? This is a true story. At least that's what the man who lived it swore before he disappeared. My name is Evan Sloan, and I used to believe in facts. I worked as a cartographer of all things, contracted by government agencies to map terrain across the Southwest, Nevada, Arizona, the edges of New Mexico. I wasn't out there looking for ghosts or legends, just elevation, landmarks, and clean GPS overlays. In early July of 2019, I got a solo assignment to remap an abandoned military testing site in the Nevada desert. The area, known unofficially as Section Dust, had been closed since the late 80s, after rumors of a failed weapons test contaminated the land. I was told all that was classified nonsense. My job was simple: 3 days alone in the desert to scan and log topographical changes. In and out. Easy pay. I didn't tell anyone this, but I was kind of excited. I liked the silence. The desert felt like the last place on Earth that could keep a secret, but I didn't know how true that was. I didn't know some secrets were alive. The journey in was uneventful, just blistering sun, radio silence, and cracked earth that stretched to forever. I set up camp by a ruined observation post, just a skeleton of steel and rusted bolts half swallowed by the dunes. The air there was unnaturally still, not just quiet, dead. The kind of stillness that makes you feel like the world has stopped breathing. That night I heard something. It was just past 2 a.m., the moon a fingernail of silver over the horizon. I'd been sleeping in my truck, engine off, windows cracked, when I heard the crunching. Slow, deliberate footsteps in the sand just outside. At first I thought it was wind, but there was no wind. I didn't move. I listened, heartbeat sharp in my throat. Crunch, pause, crunch. Whatever it was, it circled my vehicle, once, twice, then stopped behind the truck. I strained to look through the side mirror, but saw only the flicker of shifting shadows. It stood there, still as a corpse. And then, a whisper. So quiet, it was almost beneath hearing. "Don't turn around." I froze. My brain tried to logic it away. Auditory hallucination, heat stress, maybe a dream. But I hadn't been asleep. I stayed there until dawn, not daring to move. When light finally touched the dunes, I got out, heart still thumping. No footprints, not a single sign of anything near my truck. But the back window was fogged with what looked like a breath mark. From the inside, I nearly packed up right then. But pride is a stupid, heavy thing. I told myself it was nothing and carried on. The second day, I moved deeper into Section Dust, charting old buildings and relay towers long devoured by sand. That's when I found the hole. It was at the center of the site, a perfect circle in the earth, maybe 6 feet across. No visible bottom. It looked recent, clean edges, no debris, just a void in the ground that felt wrong. Not just out of place, unnatural. I dropped a rock into it, never heard it land. I should have walked away, but I'm a mapper. I document things, so I took a photo with my phone. The screen glitched just for a second, a flicker of static and distortion. When it cleared, I stared at the photo. The hole was there, but so was something else, a figure, standing on the edge, shadow black with no visible features. It hadn't been there when I took the photo, and worse, it cast no shadow. I deleted it instantly, then turned in a slow circle, scanning the endless desert. Nothing. That night I dreamed of footsteps, not mine, and I dreamed of breathing, raspy and slow, like someone sleeping right next to me, sharing my pillow. When I woke up, my boots had been moved outside the truck, placed side by side, pointing toward the desert. On the third day, I made the mistake of entering one of the half-buried bunkers. It took me 20 minutes to clear the sand from the hatch. The interior was pitch black, stale with the scent of old metal and something else, like sulfur and rot. I climbed down, flashlight cutting through thick dust and broken walls lined with frayed wires. Inside, I found old beds, rusted lockers, and a mural on the far wall. That mural haunts me. It was painted in faded red, an old military insignia above rows of faceless silhouettes. But at the center, where a commanding officer might be, was a black figure, just like the one in the photo. No features, no face, just void. Below it, scratched into the wall, were the word, "My blood went cold." They say the desert is empty, a vast, sun-scorched wasteland where nothing survives but snakes, heat, and dust. But if you've ever spent a night out there, truly alone, you'll know that's a lie. Because the desert keeps secrets, buried beneath the dunes and crawling beneath your skin. And sometimes something follows you back, something that doesn't cast a shadow of its own, until it's in your room, standing behind you. So if you've ever seen a shadow that didn't belong to you, one that moved when you didn't, let me tell you why. It began with a road trip, a summer adventure that should have been forgettable. Jason and Marcus, two college friends from Phoenix, planned a weekend of off-roading and camping through Arizona's vast Sonoran Desert. Both were thrill-seekers, always chasing new adrenaline highs, and the desert, with its isolation, heat, and uncharted backroads, promised exactly that. They borrowed a beat-up 4x4 from Marcus's cousin, packed enough gear for 2 nights, and set out with no real plan except to lose the city behind them. The GPS barely functioned as they headed deeper into nowhere, relying instead on hand-drawn maps from off-roading forums and tips from strangers at gas stations. By late afternoon, they were miles from any known trail, surrounded by dunes and jagged red rock formations. The sun was dipping low, casting long amber shadows over the sand. Jason, filming on his GoPro, joked about ghost towns and desert ghouls. "Bet we end up finding some cursed-ass place where people disappear," he laughed. Marcus, grinning, added, "As long as it's haunted, I'm down." They pitched their tent near an abandoned mine shaft, surrounded by rusted fences and sun-bleached warning signs. The site was eerie but perfect for their twisted sense of adventure. That night they drank cheap beer under a sky smeared with stars. The silence out there was absolute, so quiet they could hear the hiss of sand brushing against the tent walls. Somewhere past midnight, Marcus woke Jason with a whisper. "Did you hear that?" Jason blinked. "What?" "Voices, outside." They stayed still, ears straining. At first, nothing. Then, just on the edge of hearing, came murmurs. Faint, garbled, like someone whispering in a forgotten language. Jason unzipped the tent slowly, stepping out into the cold night. He scanned the horizon with his flashlight. Nothing but sand, wind, and shadow. But as the light passed over the ground, it caught something. A print in the sand. It wasn't human. 3-toed. Deep. Leading toward the mine shaft. Neither of them slept after that. The next morning, both men tried to play it off as a prank. Maybe coyotes. Maybe their minds messing with them. Still, Jason felt off. Like the desert air was heavier. The silence now seemed less peaceful and more waiting. That day, they explored the mine shaft despite the uneasy tension between them. The mouth of the shaft yawned wide, a black void in the rust-red rock. Cold air poured from it like breath from a sleeping beast. They couldn't resist going in, filming everything for their channel, laughing nervously as their voices echoed inside. But after 20 minutes of walking deeper in, the tunnel shifted. The walls, once uniform stone, now looked hand-carved, etched with strange, primitive symbols. Not mining marks. Something older. At the very end of the shaft, they found a chamber. A perfect circle carved into the rock, lit faintly by cracks in the ceiling above. In the center was a stone pillar. On it, a bowl filled with black sand. Marcus touched it. Just a pinch. Curious. The sand hissed, then the lights on their helmets flickered. Just for a moment. But in that second, Jason saw it. A shape standing in the corner. A tall, thin figure with no face and limbs too long. It didn't move, didn't breathe, but he felt its stare pressing against his soul. The lights came back. The shape was gone. "We're leaving," Jason said, already backing out. Marcus didn't argue. They left the shaft and drove out fast, barely stopping to break down the tent. Neither of them spoke until they hit pavement again. Back in civilization, things felt almost normal. But that night, back in their apartment, something was different. Jason kept seeing movement out of the corner of his eye. Every shadow felt too deep, too sharp. The lights flickered in their hallway. Marcus complained of waking up at 3:17 a.m. to whispers and scratching at his bedroom door. At first, he thought Jason was messing with him, but Jason had been asleep. By the third night, they weren't speaking much. The air in their apartment had changed. It felt inhabited. Then the dreams started. Jason saw the figure again, standing in the mine shaft, its limbs twisting unnaturally as it walked toward him, whispering in that same alien tongue. He'd wake up drenched in sweat, convinced he hadn't been dreaming.